We had a media arm that published propaganda, also known as economic reports, but it was all pay to play. And we actually toured the ghost cities just outside of Beijing.
These are economic pathologies rooted in the violation of private property.
And lies.
And lies.
The propagation
yes.
of lies at mass scale.
It reminds me of Soviet Russia, where at the end they were saying they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work.
Like Booth says, you can't have an honest society built on a dishonest ledger.
All of that is under the presumption that we continue with this normalcy. But if you want to know what I really think should happen, I actually think it's time for the United States to Balkanize.
Because the president is the choke point, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we get 2 options every 4 to 8 years? And like, that's how we run 330 million people in the most powerful nation that ever existed? Like, are you
All empires fall.
Yeah.
And so I think we're there. All fiat currencies fail. We're also there. If you're in dollars, if you live in the dollar world, life is not going to be good for you.
Trojan horse of freedom is in the castle. What are your thoughts on how this unfolds? All right, Michelle, happy to have you here.
Great to be here.
So you're Michelle Weekley.
That's right.
Not daily, not monthly?
Nope.
No? Why weekly?
It's real.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2016, you were living in Dubai and you got recruited into the foreign direct investment group. Business. What is that?
I like to refer to it as an ecosystem.
Okay.
It is an ecosystem of sorts. It's foreign direct investment it's really the vehicle by which nation state money laundering occurs.
Nice.
So you have economic investment, economic growth, all the way down to the local level, within counties and states, and you work your way up into foreign direct investment, which is the global ecosystem of money, whether it's public or private, government money or private money moving countries. And sometimes that's via the state and sometimes that's via private corporations.
And probably never XRP, right?
Definitely not XRP, man.
Just curious.
Those people are so MK Ultra.
Oh my gosh.
I prefer the word retarded, but yes.
Yeah, that works too.
As well.
Sorry to interrupt your flow there, but
no, that's all right. So I'm admittedly, I had no idea what FDI was. It's not something that you go to school for or are credentialed. There are, of course, a lot of people in that world that are highly credentialed, the whole idea of academia and degrees and things like this, because they love experts and expertise. And I had always bucked that. But I am kind of a people person, and I happened to be in Thailand actually, and there was an event, there was a free zone event that I had a friend speaking at this event, and that I met through him. I met the guy that ultimately recruited me into the role that
What's a free zone event?
That's a good question. So free trade zones, or FTZs, sometimes SZEs, are special economic zones. And they allow countries set up special economic zones to allow illegal business.
Tax-free trade.
Yeah. Anything that they don't want others to know that they're doing, they'll do through a free trade zone. And so if you look at a map of trade zones, they are highly concentrated in the most corrupt countries. But no one is immune from this. The United States has, I think, between 100 and 150 free trade zones. But Dubai has free trade zones, and they allow a lot of economic activity to happen sort of outside of the strict controls that they run the country through. So it really does open up economic activity. And then, there's always a sliding scale of how much of that activity is legit and how much of it is corrupt insanity. And the foreign direct investment ecosystem controls that niche up at the top where it's just all corruption. So it was fascinating.
And so who recruited you into the foreign direct investment ecosystem?
Yeah. So just some guy that ran a consulting company. And there's a lot of consulting companies because a consulting company is vague. You don't know exactly what it does. That's by design. And they can kind of do exactly whatever they want, right? So the company that I went to work for, which is really a dime a dozen, there was nothing special in particular about this company. There's many companies that do similar things. But we had a media arm that published propaganda, also known as like economic reports, but it was all pay to play. We did a lot of research, which is just backfilling conclusions. So people assume that research, you might hire a consulting company to do research for you and then make decisions based off of the results of that research. But it actually happens in reverse, where decisions are made and then a consulting company is hired and then the data is backfilled to support the conclusion that they started with. And so that's how a lot of these big things that you hear about, that's how they all unfold. One of the examples that I have in the thread, for example, is the ghost cities that developed in China. And we actually toured the ghost cities in, I believe it was 2016 or 2017. We got to tour the ghost cities just outside of Beijing.
What was that like?
That was an unbelievable experience. I think the more time that goes by, I look back in retrospect and it just gets harder and harder to comprehend. At the time, I have to admit, it wasn't as weird as, you just think. So let me back up. We had a $20 million contract with the second largest land developer in China. So second behind Evergrande was this company called CFLD. We had a massive contract with them. We provided research and statistics and data for them to support the continued growth of their development, which of course is all a Ponzi scheme. It's a house of cards they're building. But you play pretend and then you get paid. So we were spending a lot of time in China, and we, took helicopters out, landed helicopters in the middle of streets, because of course there's no one living there. So there's no reason that you can't just land your helicopter.
Literally nobody.
Nobody there. You could see, I have pictures still on my phone. I have pictures as we're going to land. There's a guy sweeping the street and there's a guy on a bike. So there's two guys in, however far your radius view is, hundreds of miles. And then you go on these very well orchestrated tours where you walk into an empty room and then you go into the next room and there might be a couple of people there. There was a science building, for example, and they had a couple of people in lab coats, but there was no equipment in the lab, very much all for show. And I'll never forget, we walked into their future planning showroom, and they had all of these to scale model set up of the continued development that they were going to be doing. And they said, we're currently at 30% occupancy and we project to be at 60% next year. And that moment will forever sit in my soul, because that to me, it brought so much clarity. There, we were not at 30% occupancy. They were at less than 2% occupancy. There was no one living here. We had just flown in toward the cities. This was 2 entire days that we took buses through these areas. There was no one there. There was no one there. And so this idea that these cities were 30% full was so absurd. And I use this example a lot because I think it's a really good example of how corruption works and how we end up unknowingly participating in it. In that moment, what do I do, right? I'd been recruited into this job. I may or may not have any business work in this job, but here I am. It's like, you know, I've got a great title. I'm making a great salary. Everybody in my life is so proud of me. What do I do? Do I say, oh, you know, now mind you, I'm in the middle of China, in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, oh no, you're all liars. Get me out of here. Like, do I blow up my whole life? Mind you, again, like I'm nobody. I'm low on the totem pole. I'm there. I'm a pretty face. I'm there to help them schmooze, but I certainly have no authority in what's happening. So what do, right? You go along with it. I mean, I went along with it. I didn't really feel like I had much of a choice, particularly at that time. So you go home and you collect your bonus, which is massive because you've done your job of keeping your mouth shut. And then you provide the data that supports the continued development so that next year they can claim they've got 60% occupancy. And this is how we get to Evergrande collapsing. And here we are.
It reminds me of Soviet Russia, where at the end they were saying, you know, they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work.
Exactly.
It was like the trope. And
exactly.
So a ghost city, which is this entirely master planned community.
Yes.
How does something like that get funded? Why does it get funded? What is the incentive problem or misalignment that allows these things to come into existence? Because we don't, as far as I know, we don't have those in North America, at least that I'm familiar with. So how do these things exist in China or Asia and they don't exist here? So
I think it was a fiat Ponzi structure, right? They were all making lots and lots of money, and there were incentives to develop, economic incentives. So there's incentives at the high corporate level if you're one of these massive developers. And then also at the government levels, they are claiming all of this growth. They're claiming, you know, positive economic activity. I think there's a parallel. We don't have ghost cities here in the United States, but I think that we have a lot of ghost companies.
Oh yeah, zombie companies.
Yeah, you have these zombie companies, many of them listed on the stock exchange.
Right. Which are propped up by government subsidy via money printing. Yeah.
Right. So it's the exact same thing. I think it's a very strong parallel in the zombie companies being propped up so that they can go on legacy media every week and lie about how great the economy is doing. Yeah. And the little numbers go up and all of the older folks believe that their money in the system is safe and that they're going to receive their Social Security and their benefits. Right. And it maintains the illusion that everything is good.
This is a real problem because a lot of people associate that with capitalism, right? They think that zombie companies are a product of capitalism when in fact they can only exist because someone is being robbed to fund the subsidy. Sounds like it's also true with these ghost cities. These are not products of capitalism, obviously. Right. Because there's no demand there, right? There's no customers. If it's 2% occupied. Right. How would that thing ever come into existence, right?
It's also not capitalist. It's, you know, communist China. So,
because while a prudent entrepreneur would only build the thing that there is demand for. Right. And if he was wrong, then he goes out of business. Right. But because these things are state-backed, state-sponsored, state-funded, that these errors can persist and persist and persist. And then this whole like business you were in of feeding them the data that justifies the conclusion they've already come to. It's almost like an addict rationalizing their habit. Yeah. Or it's like, let me just make up a story to continue doing what I'm already doing. And so it's very, because we always come back to this common thread between fiat currency and addiction, that it very much seems like you get into these loops. Right. Of, you know, just the same way the addict, they call it reciprocal narrowing, right? He says, oh, I had a bad day at work, so I need to have a drink. Yeah. Then he has a drink, so he's had a worse day at work. So then he needs to have another drink the next day or maybe two. And it goes on and on and on until his life is in chaos. Right. Fiat currency is like, oh, well, we need to print a little money, you know, to justify the thing. And then that further misallocates capital. So you print a little more money and you keep doing that until currency hyperinflates or you end up in disaster. Yeah. So it's like, these are not products of capitalism. These are economic pathologies rooted in the violation of private property.
And lies.
The
propagation of lies at mass scale.
Yes.
Both individually and at scale, I think, is a really important part of it. Because I am all day running my mouth on lying and just begging people to be honest. Because one thing I realize in retrospect, which I think also applies to addiction, you have interventions in addiction therapy. If everyone just immediately became completely honest, it would dismantle so much of it.
Yes.
All of this is only enabled by the participation of the people in the lies.
Yes.
So,
and that's key to most addiction therapy treatments. They talk about the first thing you have to do is admit you have a problem and get real with yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to other people.
Right.
So like the honesty is a key component of recovering from that. The thing that I come to is like, it seems like there's almost this metaphysical rift because the money itself is a lie. Right, you're printing new units of currency, but it's not real money, right? It's a claim on wealth you're basically stealing from savers and reallocating it to whoever's printing the money. So when the money itself is a lie and it's not actually money, does it lead to these other lies that we're describing, zombie companies, ghost cities, et cetera?
Like Booth says, you can't have an honest society built on a dishonest ledger.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And it gets like kind of spiritual, metaphysical, but I do like the consequences are very difficult to ignore or see any other way. It's like these things would only be possible with a money printer,
right?
Or at least a tax authority, right? It's like, it's either the theft or the lying of the money printing leads to these errors that never get self-corrected as they would in a normal capitalistic system.
Right. Yeah. As you said, in true capitalism, in an actually free economic society, none of this would exist. You wouldn't have the financing for it. There's no demand. It would collapse. It would never, there would be nothing to collapse. It wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So these ghost cities, how are they being funded? Is this through debasement of the currency or foreign investment or both?
Both. Yeah. So China is, as most large governments they print money just as the United States does. They've got a fiat currency. And so they print to keep their economy propped up so that they can, go on their news channels and propagate that their economies are doing better. And, it's all so much propaganda. But yes, printing of money and economic incentives, economic development. There is real economic development that happens where hundreds of millions of dollars move, particularly between like public-private partnerships. We see that in the United States, particularly within the technology sector. So you have a lot of government money going into Google, all of the alphabet technology companies. And so the same thing is happening as well in China. They were partnered strongly with development and that collapsed. So they've pivoted and they're now doing similar things in their technology sectors. Of course, they have manufacturing, but it is all propped up by the money printing and the misaligned incentives.
When you say economic incentives too, just to get a little more granular here, these are typically government offered economic incentives, right? So government's offering whoever they want to come and do business in their country in whatever way they want them to do it. But it's typically, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually the removal of economic disincentives that they call economic incentives because they give you a lower tax rate, right? Or a tax forbearance or some other thing. It's like, we're not going to steal as much from you for a while, right? If you'll come here and do business with us. So there's not actually, sometimes they might actually dole out money as well, but it's never the government's money. It's the taxpayers' money.
It's people's money. And I would say that is one of the more honest forms by which it happens, which it does happen in that way. But also, they do also use these incentives to reward their friends. Mm-hmm. So we hear things, for example, like Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma.
Of course.
So much of that is
smoking crack.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. Providing economic advice on energy. Right. And so again, you have decisions that are made at the top where this guy wants something from that guy. And so we make an agreement that you guys are going to receive this $300 million economic award.
If you hire my son.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is, again, the decisions being made at the top and then being like backfilled from the bottom to like pretend that they were real decisions when they really weren't.
Yeah. So corruption, nepotism, these things all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it's a really small group of people. Somebody, when I first told this story and I started talking about it publicly, somebody looked at a picture I had and said, I feel like I've seen some of these people in a picture. It's always the same people in the pictures, which is an interesting observation because you have the same 200 plus ish, maybe 2,000 people that are at the top running everything. And so whether I'm in Dubai or Thailand or China, Bogota, Colombia, wherever you are, it's the same people.
And these people, are they part of the World Economic Forum?
Absolutely.
iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera, which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer, so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. If you're anything like me, you understand that Bitcoin is something we can use every day to connect, to collaborate, and to build stronger, freer communities. As true Bitcoiners, you all know we are each responsible for onboarding more Bitcoiners. That's why I chose to partner with Cowbolt, an expense splitting app that settles in Bitcoin. It can be as simple as splitting a dinner bill. Your friend covers dinner and you reimburse them, but you send it back to him in Bitcoin. Now your friend has their first sats, and as I always say, where your money goes, the mind follows. By using Cowbolt to get Bitcoin into the hands of your friends and family, you can help us orange pill the world. Cowbolt is built to let you split costs, share expenses, and settle instantly, while always keeping full control of your keys. Cowbolt is simple, social, non-custodial, exactly how Bitcoin was meant to be used. If you're serious about Bitcoin, it's time to act like it. Download Cowbolt today on iOS or Android. To learn more, go to cowbolt.com. Again, that's Cowbolt, COWBOLT.com.
I've seen some posts over the last couple of years, you speaking to having some level of involvement with the WEF. Can you explain what that was and what that was like?
For better or worse, I never attended the World Economic Forum.
You were in Davos?
I have not been to Davos. In fact, when I got recruited to work in foreign direct investment, I had been in tech for my whole career. I didn't even know what the World Economic Forum was. But suddenly I was surrounded by people who were obsessed with the World Economic Forum, its opinions, its decrees, and they either were regulars in Davos or their entire life goal was to be invited. And so that kind of like perked my antennas up, just the absolute obsession with this event. We participated, I have been several times to an event called the World Forum for Foreign Direct Investment. It's like a B or C level event for people that can't get invited to Davos, but they want to run in the circles. So I have been to that event, and it's, it's got the same goals and agendas, and there is a bit of crossover with the power players.
This is a bunch of people sort of scurrying to get as close to that power spigot as possible, basically. And Absolutely. Then so the people, the World Economic Forum itself, then who are they representing? Do you know?
Themselves.
I
mean, supposedly the people, is my understanding, is that they represent what they believe to be the right agenda for a global agenda. So the people of the world, they believe in a one world government, driven by globalism, where individualism is criminalized, even nationalism is criminalized or worse. And so they really run things for themselves, and then we're just peasants.
What a weird, so like who, they claim to have their own agenda for us, for our best interest, of course, to keep us safe from ourselves and the cow farts and all the other problems with the world. So do we know though, do we have any explicit understanding of who actually owns that entity or who forms its agenda? Like, do we know the economic incentives the World Economic Forum faces, or is that opaque to us?
Yeah. And is it a corporation, or is this just this like informal group of proverbial overlords?
I am not sure if they're incorporated or not. My guess is they would be a nonprofit because they're certainly not paying taxes. There is a structure to it. So you had Klaus Schwab, who was at the head of it. He has stepped down. There is an organization. There's I think a government structure amongst themselves. I am not super familiar with like who all. I do believe that Larry Fink was just named.
I saw that.
Yes.
Recently.
So I'm still processing that.
Yeah.
I mean.
What was he named?
I don't know. He's part of the WEF now.
Yeah, he joined their like governing board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so these people that are obsessed with the WEF, like what's their ideological stance? I mean, I guess you kind of elaborated upon that somewhat. Could you unpack that a little further? Like, what are these people thinking? Like, hey, we just need to rally all these peasants into this one world government ideology and...
Pretty much. And, I will say there is a bit of a spectrum in terms of you meet people and they have opinions. But when it comes to... There is a towing of the party line where if their opinion may differ from that of the larger agenda, they will toe the line so that they don't get ostracized, so that they do get invited. It's a very much fall in line type of situation, which was, for me, it was interesting to observe particularly as we were doing business with China, because I'm learning about the CCP. We were followed in Beijing. We have minders at all of our meetings. And it's a similar parallel to how this World Economic Forum ecosystem works, where they're towing the party line. There's sort of always a representative there to make sure that the agenda stays on track. And you have people, no one is willing to speak up. There's no real debate. You fall in line with what they decide, with what their agenda is, or you don't participate.
Who followed? Did the CCP or the WEF was following you?
The CCP. We were in China on business visas. So
you had officials with you everywhere you went?
We had official minders, and they did go through our rooms.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
So how does the WEF generate revenue? What is their model?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the exact answer. You have the participation of, most of the world's billionaires. Okay. And so they donate. I know that they
like
donate.
A members club.
It sort of is, yeah. And then, of course, they control all of the world's money, right? They control their own coffers. So you've got a bunch of billionaires who will add their money to these buckets of capital to further the agendas that they desire. And then they're also the ones making the decisions about where the government money goes. Mm-hmm. And so the money printers get fired up, you print a bunch of new money, and these people are really, really heavily involved in deciding where that money gets spent. And that's the sort of economic development that they
And is the mechanism of that influence, is this, because I saw something like someone like Justin Trudeau went through a WEF program to then become, so they're grooming these people to become world leaders. I don't like the term leaders, they're parasites, but to install these fiat politicians to then carry out their agenda that they're orchestrating over decades. Is that
correct? Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely.
And how much does the
Why haven't we guillotined these people yet? What the fuck?
Let's do it. I will be there.
We need more well-armed citizens.
Yeah.
This is why they hate the U.S. and free speech and the Second Amendment.
Right.
And all of that.
And even individualism.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about that. Like speaking up and speaking out against it and like looking back and when you're in it, you don't quite realize. I at least hadn't really realized, there's literally no one questioning the narrative. There's no one questioning any of this. But the further out I get and the more that I look back in retrospect, the more you really realize, like, literally no one questions anything.
Yeah. Very acute groupthink reinforced by the attraction to power and or money.
Absolutely.
The gravitas that's there. Have you read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman?
Yes, I have.
That's the book that keeps jumping to mind right now.
Yeah. So I've considered writing. I don't know how much of it I want to go public with, but it's certainly, I may write a book about everything that I saw. But that's a book certainly that people are always.
When you have private security in a citadel.
I would need it, right? If I'm gonna.
How many whistleblowers are? Now that I think about it, I don't know that I can think of anybody that was part of the WEF that has then spoken out against them.
There are not a lot. And I will
suicide themselves, or is it just like this one-way sticky trap that you just get sucked into?
It's a combo. I can't think of any offhand that were unalived in particular, but I'll give you an example. At one of the big Bitcoin events, there was a girl who approached me. And she had worked at, it was one of these, I don't know if it was the UN or the World Bank or the IMF, one of these alphabet organizations that participates really heavily with the World Economic Forum. And I sat down with her and spoke for a couple of hours, and she had experienced a lot of very similar things that I had experienced. And she said, "Thank you so much for speaking out about this." She said, "I would really like to talk about this, but my husband still works for this organization. And if I say something, there is no doubt he will lose his job." And so you get really ingrained. I think I got really, I don't want to say lucky, but there were a number of very unique circumstances that put me in a position to be able to speak up. Bitcoin being one of them, escaping that fiat trap by finding Bitcoin. And I will say, the guy that I worked for, who was the head of the consulting company, he is no longer with us. He is no longer alive. So I don't know to what extent I would have spoken out had that not happened. In fact, I struggled really in the beginning of COVID. I had just spent all this time in China when COVID started, right? And I really.
So wait, you were in China when COVID first hit?
But we were there. I came back to the States at the in 2018, up until the very end of 2017. And so 2018, I crash and burn out of all of that. I come back to the States. I was very, very sick. And
why? Just out of curiosity, just nasty, toxic energy? Just the whole thing
I got super sick. In fact, I had viral pneumonia in both of my lungs. And I had been in China. And so a few people have suggested it's possible that I had a very, very early viral strain. I don't know if that's true or not, but I was, I think, so stressed, emotionally, physically taxed, that I burnt out in flames. So I came back and I still had a very good friend that was living in China, a lot of former colleagues. I was on WeChat all the time, like watching the streams. And so they actually COVID started there in 2019 and they did lockdowns and things like that. And I, very early on, I was like, I think that there is something happening. This is going to come here. And people, of course, thought I was insane. I wasn't on Twitter yet. So there's not a lot of record of it. But, people in my life can attest to my insanity and everyone's like, no way, that'll never happen here. And then lockdowns went to Italy. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt, it's in the EU, it's coming here. And of course it did. And so when that happened, I think the silver lining in that for me was that a lot of people who had called me crazy came back and said, wait a second, what did you say? What did you say about that? What did you say about this? And it gave me the opportunity to really start to speak up. And around that time is when the guy that I was working for, the details are blurry, but he is no longer, with us. And so that enabled me to feel like it was safe for me to speak up.
Why? Just out of curiosity. Because I would imagine that would be the opposite. Like if somebody mysteriously passed, make me be a little
the people that are at the top of these institutions or consultancies, things like that. You hear the statistics about like CEOs being, I don't know if it's like 70% of CEOs being genuinely psychopaths and things like that. So these people are like bigger than life, kind of egomaniacs. And so if there was anyone in that world that I was worried about direct repercussions from, it would have been him.
That makes sense.
I think, that organization still exists. And so I'm very careful. I've never said anything that is not absolutely verifiably true. And I think that the truth is, it will set us free. I mean, go ahead and sue me and say that that's not true because it is and I can prove it. So I've maintained very, very strict, like, I don't embellish. I don't say anything that's not completely true. And also the top of that snake is gone. I don't think that anyone else in the organization would be like motivated enough to come and argue about it.
Do you think so sort of like during the pandemic, there was this dynamic where people had originally, let's say, advocated for the jab. Yeah. And then the data starts piling up that says they're wrong, right? The data keeps piling up saying they're wrong, but they become more and more obstinate in their view. It's like because they've already professed this belief and it kind of starts to become a component of your identity over time. Do you think there was some of that dynamic going on inside of these organizations where people just get so accustomed to telling the lie over many years?
Absolutely.
That at some point you can't even disentangle your own identity from the agenda or the party line that you've been pulling. And so people it's not just fall in line, but you like become the line. You get threaded into the line.
I think that's all super, super accurate. Somebody said it is harder to convince someone that you have been lied to. It is easier to convince you of a lie than that you have been lied to.
For sure.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
And so we've seen a lot of that. I think that, as you've described it, is super accurate. You get ingrained in it. And I experienced it briefly, right? Because what do you do? Again, I'm in China. Like, do I call my parents and say this is all a lie? Mm-hmm. And so you do start to go along with it. You start to believe it and you just get so entangled that you can't get out. There's another example that I've given. It's a really like a micro example of the larger how it all works. But when I went to work for this company, they wrote a bio about me and they did a press release. I'm like, oh, cool. Like never had that happen before, right? And there were several things in the press release that were not true. They claimed that I had a master's degree. They claimed that I had been the head of this like women's organization, like 2 or 3 different things like that, right? And we had a media arm. So I went to the head of the media people and I said, this isn't true. They're like, it makes you look good. It makes us look good. Like, keep your mouth shut.
Wow.
And so this is like, day 2 or 3 on the job, right? What do you do? Like, okay, do I quit my job? And I'll never forget, like, okay, yeah, I look good. I guess that's okay. I mean, they're exaggerations, right? Are they lies or are they exaggerations? And then it came out and my mom called me and my mom was like, what is this? Like, this is not true. Like, she was upset. And I had to revisit my like moral stance on it, right? Yeah. And say like, yeah, sorry, Mom. Like, oh, they published that and I didn't really know, like, which I did know.
Yeah.
But I also didn't have a lot of say in it, right? I had brought it up.
What's fascinating about that is a microcosm of the whole business.
Absolutely, right.
So you got that little taste on day 3.
I should have known.
The little, well, it's like, I mean, I don't know. It's probably difficult to realize, this little tiny thing, because it is, it's like an embellishment.
Right.
Isn't that big of a deal? I look good, you look good, you're still paying me well.
Well, this authority is the one who's embellishing for me.
Right.
Right.
But it's very easy to gloss over that one. Yeah. Because no one's really been harmed, right? It's like, that seems like a non-victim crime.
But you can see.
But now that you see it in retrospect, you're like, oh, that's exactly what the business model is. They're just doing it at a much larger scale.
And builds, right. Yeah. And so I think that really contributes to my very strong stance on this idea that if we all just speak up and be honest, we can end so much of it overnight.
Yes. A single word of truth can save the world. I think someone said once. This idea of people getting entangled with the party line to the point of their own self-identity becoming the party line. So the corruption of these institutions is actually corrupting people's soul over time.
Yes.
And then we were saying earlier that it is the money printing and it is, the theft and the money printing basically that's funding these organizations. Mm-hmm. So if I could ask you a large question, if you removed all of that, like if you removed the possibility of money printing, would there be a dynamic in which people's souls would get warped and distorted into these crazy institutional representatives? It's like, I'm kind of back to that thing where if the money is a lie, it's creating this thing that's a lie. And then the people's identity become lies to fit into the thing, to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Like, so if we pulled the money printer out, like would that cascading effect
Then
unwind?
You just have a cult. Right?
Playing alone in a quiet corner of the playground.
Yeah, like
hopefully one that mass suicides, right?
Obeying the masters, towing the line. But at least there is some authenticity in just a cult, right? Yeah. Like I've joined a cult and I believe everything they say. I don't question it. And I think that's what you'd have left if you took the money out of it.
Wow. So is it the corruption? I'm seeing the corruption of the money cascading and through all these other layers of corruption. And so again, fix the money, fix the world.
Yeah.
Again, that may sound overly simplistic, but it sounds like that's a pretty reasonable causal chain. People are getting paid for bullshitting themselves. The institution is getting paid for bullshitting their clients. Well, then it's not long before everyone's drowning in bullshit.
Yes.
Well, then you have a cult of people who are like, we need to reduce the population by 7.5 billion people.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
Because we have scarcity issues. People are economically challenged. We should go ahead and just kill 85% of the population.
That's where it becomes evil and self-destructive, right? Yes. Because they're so drowning in bullshit that they have no concept of economic reality whatsoever. Right. And then so in their ivory tower, they think, oh, let's just kill 90% of people and that'll fix all the problems.
Well, they have identified the problem of unevenly distributed resources, which is the issue of centrally controlled money.
Yeah.
And then the response to that is
the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Proper response. It's classical cultural Marxism, right?
Yes.
Prescribe the problem.
I believe that very much so.
Or describe the problem and then prescribe the precisely opposite solution. Yeah. Not the abolition of private property. You need the perfection of private property.
More of what caused the problem. Let's have more of what caused the problem.
On that fire.
And so you knew intuitively in your first couple of days, like you had that feeling in your gut where you're like, this is something I'm not quite so sure about. Yeah. Might not have been the most obvious thing, but it was.
It was definitely, I think for me, what I was unsure of was the scale of it. So I knew very quickly that the company that I had gone to work for, the person that I had agreed to work for was a crazy person, a complete psycho. Later did I learn that they had been, for example, part of the Panama Papers. So nobody could go to Panama. So that oh, this is a lot. I think what took time for me to process was the scale of it. At first, you want to just think, well, it's one crazy guy and he runs a company, but there are really good people here. They're not all crazy. It's not all crazy. And it's the idea of like accepting that, no, actually everything is crazy. It's all a lie. Right. And so you have to get through enough of it, I guess, and see enough of it, or I needed to, in order to accept the scale. Like it wasn't just him. Sense. Yeah, it wasn't. And then furthermore, you know, you extract that out. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just our company. It was the whole industry and by extension, really like the globe. Like you're talking about these global power players.
Yeah. I forget the exact terminology in the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, but you know, they describe it as foreign aid, I think is the term they use. But then he's saying what it actually is they're going in, you know, a first world nation or going to a third world nation, completely overturn their economy and say, you're not going to produce bananas and like feed your own population anymore. That's done. You're going to produce tires for us.
Yep.
And here's how you're going to do it. We're going to loan you money.
Yeah.
But then it's going to be at a predatory rate. You're going to go bankrupt. You're going to have to borrow more. And then we're going to start basically colonizing you. It's financial colonialism, essentially. But it's called foreign aid.
Right. Yeah.
And we're here to help. We're from the government. We're here to help.
We see all these NGOs that facilitate that, right? And most recently you saw the dismantling of USAID. USAID, because it is aptly named for people to believe that it's providing an organization providing US aid. It's not. It's actually US aid. And they were almost everything they were doing was corrupt. They'll get $5 million to go and do something and they'll spend, 2 cents on the dollar for the actual cause and the rest of it goes. So yeah, the NGOs are a really big part of that like ecosystem. And I always say I started out like coming out of DC wanting to abolish the like alphabet agencies. And little did I know you had these global alphabet organizations that are even higher up playing larger games and even more insidious because they're taking over entire countries and populations. And
so if you rug pulled the money printer on all these things, you think all these 3-letter agencies, whether they be domestic or NGOs, they would just turn into little cults that would self-destruct over time because they're so out of touch with reality.
Mafias to some of them, they really do function like a mafia does. Oh. But they hold power only because of the money. So if you take the money away, it's not like there's a lot of them. I mean, we are in the majority. The people are the majority. We just don't hold the majority of the power because of the imbalance of power because of the money printer. So if you shut the money printer down, I think immediately they lose so much power and influence.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have a lot of money. They have a lot of stuff. Right. Equities, bonds, trophy real estate.
Right.
Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. What if I told you that you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, by mining Bitcoin with Blockware, you can. New guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow American Bitcoin miners to write off 100% of their mining hardware investment in a single year. That's right, a 100% write-off. So if you had $100,000 of income or capital gains, you could write off that entire amount by investing it in Bitcoin mining hardware. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to start mining Bitcoin right now with minimal effort. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost energy to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You can stack Bitcoin at a discount every day and save big when tax season comes. So you can get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove.
You were at a conference. It's my understanding that you were at a conference and there was some quiet guy in the corner talking about Bitcoin. Yes. And so how early on was that in your job working for this company? And did that have any part in like awakening you to how corrupt it all was?
I think by that point, so this was sometime in 2017, and I knew how corrupt it was and I wanted out, but I didn't know how to get out, right? I had fallen into a little bit of the trap of like I was making more money than I'd ever made, but I also had a lot of bills. I had a nice apartment and I didn't have like a lot of extra money sitting around. So I needed my job. I couldn't just quit, and what was I going to do to pay my bills? So it was June or July of 2017. I was in Cartagena, Colombia at another free trade zone conference, and I wanted out. I didn't want to be there. I was like, what on earth do I do? How do I get out of here? So I'm sitting kind of at the edges, just observing, doing as little as possible. And this Russian kid sits next to me, and we get to talking, and I don't remember the extent of the conversation, but we're talking about, you know, the corruption, and he didn't want to be there either. And I had brought up that I had previously worked in tech, and he was like, oh, I'm a developer. I don't know what he was doing at this event. I mean, thank God that he was, but he was like, have you heard of Bitcoin or Ethereum? And I was like, actually, yeah, you know, like I had friends on Silk Road back in the day, but I don't know that much about it. And he's like, well, we're building a wallet. He was working on the development of the Mycelium wallet. And he was like, you can buy cryptocurrency and then you hold it in the wallet and no government can touch it. Nobody can touch it. And that was all I needed to know. Like I was in. So I started doing as much research as I could, and I understood it first, and really for quite a long time, more from a technical perspective than I did. I did not immediately understand all of these overlays between the corruption and the insanity that I was living in. I just knew here was a technology, and I think that this can save me. And so I bought some, I was trading some, this was as like the fork wars were happening, and Ethereum, I don't know what they did, but they were doing something. And I was like, well, this is software development. I know how that works. So I was sort of like swing trading on the development of these cryptocurrencies. And I was able to make a little bit of money, like enough money that I could leave this insane job, and ultimately ended up getting very, very sick and just burnt out in flames. And it was Bitcoin that saved me and allowed me to stay. I have not worked for anyone else. I said I would never work for anyone ever again. So my job at Byte Federal is actually the first Bitcoiner job. Yes. I did take a job, you know, and now I do product development, but it's an exception.
Paul's
a great guy. I mean, I don't know how
anybody could have a problem with that guy.
He's not like running a global cabal. He wants to dismantle them as much as I do. So, but I had not worked for anyone.
So you discovered Bitcoin at a very opportune time in your journey.
I did. Yeah. I think, you know, I got really lucky, and I really didn't understand it deeply until...
Who does?
Yeah, I mean, do we even now, right? It's an endless. But when COVID hit, I think that drove me back in, and I started studying more like macroeconomics. And it really was not until that time that I had even understood or heard we talked about the word fiat. Nobody uses this word really. And I don't think if you had asked me then, like in 2017, do you know what fiat currency is? I think the answer was no. You know, what is that? And so.
Yeah, they call it cash or money probably in the circles that you run in, which is clearly the exact opposite of what it actually is.
Right.
Once you get into the money rabbit hole.
Yeah.
What is this in the notes here? You have this idea of parallelism. What is that? I've never even heard of that.
So it's the idea of just building like parallel, I don't know if societies, maybe communities is the better accurate word. I think, you know, I will always say to people, like, if you guys want to go to DC and burn it all down, like sign me up, I'm there. But I don't really see that happening. It's not necessarily a realistic solution that people are planning for. So what do we do, right? Do we just continue to participate? Like, what do we do? How do we survive this crazy world? And so parallel societies or parallel communities, there's a group in Bitcoin that I think refer to this similar concept, and they call it freedom tech. And so it's just the idea of like building structures and systems and communities fully outside of the existing governments, fully outside of, you know, the structures that exist. So I think that kind of boils more simply down to being as sovereign as you can, and not necessarily alone as a single person, but in a community that can be sovereign outside of the state or the federal tentacles.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the global Bitcoin community.
Yes.
You know, I love that. Build the new world instead of tear down the old. Seems like it's a lot easier.
That's what Buckminster Fuller said, something like that. Don't spend your energies fighting the old, but building the new.
Yes.
Like, that's how you create the new world. Because in a way, and like I deal with my own frustration about this because I feel like I've been shouting into the void about the evils of central banking for like a decade now. And at some point you get exhausted of your own shit. I'm like, I don't want to hear myself say it again.
Right.
So, you know, I had good intentions. I was like, trying to help people, wake people up. But at some point, it's like, I just want to focus on peace and love and happiness and all these other things. And I guess that's a great thing about Bitcoin is you can just focus on building Bitcoin or building in Bitcoin or promoting Bitcoin. But then the tricky thing there is that you kind of need, especially in the US, you have to describe to people the problem before they understand Bitcoin as a solution. Yeah. Because I think most people in the developed world, broadly speaking, the US specifically, they don't understand the problem with the financial system.
Very much so.
Because the financial system has basically worked for them.
Right.
So then I'm back to yelling at them about central
Right. Yeah, there's nothing better than, I hate to say it, but, you know, people who have fled communism, people who have lived through hyperinflation. Yes. You don't have to explain Bitcoin to most of these people. They understand it immediately. Bingo. And so there is a lot more, I think, peace in like coming together with these people and building the world that we want to live in versus just trying to fight, especially now, like we have Wall Street and it's all even more and more convoluted with the existing systems and structures. So yeah, it's exhausting trying to explain Bitcoin to people. You get to a point where you're like, yeah, you get it or you don't, you know?
Yeah, we're trying to I mean, I think the parallel community or whatever you want to call this, like it is very much in line with the sovereign individual thesis of being self-reliant, but also having people around you that are also self-reliant, and you sort of form these cooperative networks. I mean, we're trying to do stuff like that, right? The firearms training, trying to game out what we're going to do if Pandemic 2.0 kicks off.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's tricky.
We had a fun little gear organizing session last week with a retired military Bitcoiner.
Right.
I commend you. I will say you've been doing this for a while. I haven't been doing it to the same level as you have for as long as you have. And I've kind of gone numb a little bit. I'm just like, every fucking person on the planet, I guess some people jurisdictionally may not have this opportunity. You're 12 words away from freedom. Like, just like, how hard is it?
Right.
You know, like I'm getting a little numb to it. I see things on the news. My wife is like, oh, hey, there's this thing. Bill Gates is trying to GMO mosquitoes. And I'm just like, Bitcoin doesn't care. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, you have to, it's a fine line to walk, right? Because I try and stay informed about like all this crap that's happening. And then I have to just turn the phone off and walk away from it.
You get feisty on Twitter.
Oh, I get mad.
You get feisty.
I get in trouble. I get mad. And people, we've come to this insane place where people think that you have to agree about everything. Yeah. I'm like, just because I said something you don't like doesn't mean, like, I don't care if you like me or not, or people or even politicians, as dumb as that all is. Like, I think people are so mentally just gone mental at this point that they've forgotten this idea of just like debate and discourse and conversation. And I mean, the world's just gone completely insane.
That's what keeps a free society free.
Yeah.
Is right. The ability to express ideas that other people are not going to like and vice versa.
Right.
But there's a weird thing where we've become so overly identified with the political aspect of our identity, I guess because of left-right fiat politics, and people think, and democracy too, right? We need to vote and agree all on one thing. It's like, actually we don't. Like, fork you. I'll go over here and you go over there. And then we do what we want. So it is frustrating, but it does seem like there's a resurgence of debate and dialogue, at least in digital media, right? So that kind of top-down media is on the way out. It seems like people are much more engaged on social media, but we still have this hangover of like, we need to argue everything to some conclusion. And you don't actually need to do that, right? It is, you have your beliefs and your values and your practices. Okay, well, if they don't align with mine, well, that's great. You go over there and do that. We'll go over here and do this, and we'll see who wins. Let the marketplace sort it out. Yeah,
and you don't even have to agree on all the things, even amongst friends, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just become it's all so polarized, I think, driven by politics and this, the cultural Marxism that I think they're using to drive everyone insane and keep everyone divided so that there's no organized pushback.
And to fight against, across any line other than individualism versus collectivism, right? Make it racial, make it left, right, make it rich, poor. Just never make it about the state versus the individual.
Right.
Well, it's cultural Marxism cloaked as capitalism.
Yeah.
So people are genuinely confused.
Well, they're blaming capitalism.
And there are people that have genuine concerns. They have identified problems in the world. They haven't found the root of the problem. And they're like, okay, well, if we could just get Trump in office, then things will be better.
Right.
And so I sympathize for them, but it's like I said, I'm getting numb to it all.
Yeah. Very difficult. I wonder too, like how much Twitter amplifies all this, because it dehumanizes all of us, right?
Yeah.
We're just a little avatar in a little circle with a little face posting words. Like there's no human to human interaction, right? There's no decency or manners. It's just like, hey, fuck you. No, fuck you.
No, that's been a really weird experience. I don't know if weird is the right word, but I didn't start running my mouth on Twitter till Elon bought Twitter and took it private.
Yeah.
And so I think, I've become very involved in the Bitcoin community. I think people just assumed that I was always there, but I wasn't. I was actually in Bitcoin and not on Twitter, which can happen.
What concerned you get stuck at a gulag, a key extraction camp?
No. Well, I no doubt I would have been banned, but going back to pre-FDI, I was in DC. I was working in tech. I worked for an ISP. In the early 2000s, I worked for a social company. We cooperated with Amazon and Facebook. So I knew in the very, very early days, I knew how much cooperation was happening between the social media apps and the governments, in particular the intelligence agencies. And so the Twitter files, for example, I mean, if you lived in DC, you knew what was happening with Twitter. It was very much public knowledge. So there was nothing that came out there that surprised me. And so I was not going to go there and run my mouth. So I didn't.
That makes sense. So I'm curious, you've been in Bitcoin for some time now. You probably thought somewhat deeply about this. What do people like Klaus Schwab think about Bitcoin? Like, do you speculate at all? Like, It almost seems to me at times like this agenda that they've been planning or working on for a long, long time is being expedited.
Oh yeah, it's accelerating. So I know what they think of us, and that is that we are peasants and that we are beneath them.
Can we delineate they and us? So they is just NGOWEF participants.
The elite.
And us is everyone that's
literally anyone else.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was shocked at the degree to which the people in that ecosystem genuinely believe that they know better than, so I was in that world like in 2016 when Trump first was running for office. And I didn't have a lot of strong feelings on it, but of course they all did. And it was, super heavily like anti-Trump. And in those early days, I was genuinely confused by this. I was like, oh, why do you guys hate him so much? Like he was on The Apprentice. Everybody loved him. And so it confused me right out of the gate that you couldn't question any opinion. And that is when I learned it was because they genuinely thought he was a clown and that we knew better and that he was not of the right breeding to be ruling over us. And, it's just this whole, like, yeah, they really do think they're better than you.
So is that racism at the bottom? Like, what is that? They think they have they're from a superior bloodline that peasants are not from?
Therefore, I don't know if it's bloodline, or I would say more pedigree,
class, right?
A social class.
Pedigree, okay.
Social class, yeah.
So do they accept new entrants? So if you're the, newly rich billionaire tech guy or whatever,
you can get in there. I got in there, right?
Okay.
Yeah. They thought I was cute. I got my way in.
So if you buy your way in, you're no longer a peasant all of a sudden.
Right.
Okay.
But you have to agree with them. It's not like you can buy your way in and go and change their minds.
Gotcha.
You're coming in and you're agreeing, you're signing. There's a social contract that you agree with everything. You're not going to come in and change anyone's mind on anything. And Bitcoin included, so I would say they very much look down on us. And I think up until very recently, there was a similar attitude about Bitcoin, that it was this silly internet thing. And, I don't think there was any depth of understanding. And so it was like, oh yeah, you can have your little cryptocurrency. And, there was no like weight to it. I think the ETFs being approved in the US on Wall Street, that was a real turning point where it gave validity to Bitcoin as a real asset class and forced them to take a look and say, what is this? I don't think that they understand Bitcoin deeply enough.
They don't realize there's a checkmate sitting on the board right in front of them.
They do not. No. And I think we are all the better for it. For as long as that lasts, that they don't understand that there's a Trojan horse working its way in, the better.
Allows the Trojan horse to just get deeper into the castle.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where I think crypto is this is the utility of crypto too. That
I could see that.
Confound crypto and Bitcoin. That
right. You found a good use case for crypto.
But it's true for the regulators too, right?
Yes.
So anyone that wants to kill this thing, which let's get real right now it's beyond the point. But there was a point in Bitcoin's history where it could have been killed in the cradle, right? Who knows where that was exactly? But with all these shit coins everywhere and everyone's trying to get rich and all the regulators are distracted, chasing down all these Ponzi scheme operators and victims, well, Bitcoin just got a chance to grow and grow and grow. So not only is it a Trojan horse, but it's clouded in this, it's cloaked in this cloud of shit coinery that's
got a bunch of shit all over it. Huh?
Yeah.
Don't mind this homeless Bitcoin thing. You just stay in the corner
grows,
next to the
right?
fentanyl addicted street.
You bury a seed in dirt and covered in shit, and that's what makes it grow.
Yeah.
It's like the internet. I like to tell people, or I think a good parallel is that crypto is the .com bubble. So you have all of these websites. Now it's blockchain. And we know it's going to blow up. We know most of them don't provide utility. Most of them are scams. And you have Bitcoin, which is the actual internet.
Yes.
Right. So we know the internet will exist. The rest of it.
I say the same thing, by the way. Yeah. And it's the best analogy, right? Like these things are companies Bitcoin is the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how you have to think. Then you need to go down all the rabbit holes of what the internet is and how the protocols are decentralized and how they're adopted. They're not, they're a matter of social consensus. They're not a matter of decree, right?
Yeah.
It's not a company that issued a thing and then it had a product market fit. It's just people choosing what works best for them, choosing which language works best for them. And then it's like, okay, so you get that. And then you need to get the economic side. Mm-hmm. So it's, the internet and gold had a baby and its name is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Is I think the best way to get people over the hump. Of course, if they understand those things about the internet and gold, that helps.
Right.
Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. Onramp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. Onramp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-sig vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which that have unilateral control over your assets. More than just security, Onramp simplifies inheritance and estate planning, ensuring your Bitcoin wealth moves seamlessly to your loved ones without the risk and complexities of self-custody. Easily designate beneficiaries right in the Onramp dashboard, eliminating the need for unreliable treasure maps or other complex key-sharing schemes. You can also avoid the probate process and ensure your heirs receive their Bitcoin securely with legal title transfers designed to keep your wealth intact for generations. As Bitcoin continues to appreciate, Onramp helps you seamlessly access financial services, from inheritance and insurance to trading, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security. And importantly, the onboarding process is fast and frictionless. I set up my own Onramp account, and it was far easier than dealing with hardware wallets or traditional self-custody setups. The team walked me through everything step by step, making sure I had a secure, reliant setup for my Bitcoin wealth. Secure your generational wealth with confidence. Schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove.
So Uncle Larry Fink is the WEF now in some capacity.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any legitimate or a potential attacks on Bitcoin that we should be concerned about? Like Whitney Webb. I picture her just, Fink wants to blockchainify everything. He's going to co-opt Bitcoin. I mean, have you thought about any of that? Do you have any concerns?
Oh, I have thought about this endlessly for the past 2 years. And I would say my biggest concern is the installation of fiat regulation into the Bitcoin ecosystem. So Bitcoin companies are increasingly subject to existing fiat regulatory structures, KYC, AML, KYT, KYB, chain analysis. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that you probably are not aware of if you're not working in it deeply. And we need to be really careful about how strongly we adopt all of these checks and balances, if you want to give it the benefit of the doubt. Of course, we know it's really just tyranny and control. But I was, for better or worse, I was a very strong advocate. I came out and fought with people about voting for Trump. And that's its own conversation, whether voting matters, whether we should vote, all of this. But to me, I was very, very deep in Choke Point 2.0. They were working on shutting down the industry. And what mattered to me is that stopped and that I kept my job and that my colleagues that I love could continue to feed their families and we didn't all lose our jobs. And they were actively trying to shut the entire industry down. And I think people don't understand how close they got. So that is what concerns me. Of course, Bitcoin will survive, but will we survive, right? And so you can say that Bitcoin doesn't care, but so long as you are a person who is a citizen of a country or subject to its laws and regulations, and if you don't want to be labeled a criminal or have to flee, then you're going to have to care about what they do with these rules and regulations and how they get applied to this thing that we care so very deeply about.
Scott, I've only heard of this Operation Choke Point
2.0, yeah.
What were they actually trying to do? Shut down every Bitcoin/crypto company in the US and pretty escalate regulation? Like what was the big plan here?
Wasn't it mostly controlling the with the on and off ramps?
All of what you've both said. Yeah. So it started largely with debanking. Okay. So we lost our bank. We went through like 200 different Byte Federal, the company that I work for. So
I've been debanked 4 times too.
Yeah.
So
I got debanked. I had a cannabis bank account closed because I was a cannabis farmer.
So that makes it hard to do business. If you're a large functioning company, you know, you're familiar with the struggles of like trying to run a company without a bank account. So they debanked everyone. They went in and made a bunch of new regulations about banks not being allowed to bank Bitcoin and crypto companies. And there was a regulatorily, they were assaulting the regulation and things were getting really, really strict. We saw the arrest of the Samurai wallet devs, the Tornado Cash, that all was happening as Choke Point 2.0 was unfolding. And if there had not been a regime change, I don't know that we would be sitting here today. We might be living in El Salvador. That was my backup plan. Maybe we would be in Dubai. I may or may not be employed with my current company. But Bitcoiners in America would not have had jobs. And so that is why I advocated the way that I did for a regime change. It's not perfect, but it at least stopped the assault on the industry.
Was Coinbase or any of these other mega exchanges, Gemini, were they exempt from that? Because it seems that like if you're going to implement this strategy to prevent people from using this uncontrollable technology, you want to corral them into the ETFs or into Coinbase and limit their withdrawals or whatever, right? And so are you aware of that? Did Brian Armstrong lose sleep any night, you know, in his mansion thinking about, I'm going to lose my bank account?
I don't think that he did. There was a little bit of grandfathering in, and that was happening primarily with the really large, you know, the brand names that you know that are highly centralized. I think more of what was happening, which they were happy to comply with, was regulators were in our offices demanding more and more requirement. So we were audited by FinCEN. FinCEN spent like 3 months in our offices going through everything that they could. And through that auditing process, it was made very clear to us what the plans were. Had there not been a regime change, they very much were going after this idea. I don't want to say the idea of self-custody, but, you know, self-custody is the idea of self-custody, and that you have something that they cannot touch, they cannot have any say whatsoever over. That was really one of the core problems. And then, yes, it's really a matter of like heavily regulating the on and off ramps and applying these AML, KYC regulations into the Bitcoin companies. So some centralization did occur because we saw a lot of small companies and wallets and software initiatives leave. Like Americans can no longer use Wallet of Satoshi. That was a really great wallet, super easy to orange pill people with.
Didn't we lose Phoenix wallet as well?
We lost Phoenix. Yeah. They pulled out of the US market. Yeah. So it was an interesting time. You know, Americans were learning to use VPNs and it kind of makes you chuckle. Like, yeah, it, you know, that's what you do.
And they went really hard on the anonymity services, right? Yes. The Tornado Cash and whatnot.
Yes.
So basically attacking, they want to be able to trace and track everything.
Correct.
And make sure that people need to leave their coin on deposit with a custodian rather than hold it themselves.
Right.
So basically trying to disempower.
Or business. Sell coin through Coinbase, for example, because then you have this taxable.
You have them into a
centralized
correct. Yeah, there was so the EU has been even stricter with this. They have these regulations called MiCA. You're not allowed to reuse addresses. There's like some super strict stuff going on over there. And I think there was a thing on Twitter with Giacomo who's had an address, a wallet address got flagged. And that was part of what was going on because they were increasing. That was a result of like chain analysis being run. And so the wallet that he was trying to sell through was requiring additional KYC in order for him to off ramp. And so those were the types of things that they were dialing up and wanting to institute categorically across the board.
And then what happened since Trump was elected? What happened to that whole operation?
So a lot of it has either come to a halt or slowed down. There are still things that got started during that time that are kind of still going. We saw, unfortunately, the Samurai Wallet devs came to a plea deal, and that set not a great precedent for privacy tools. And they basically took accountability for the software that they wrote and said, even though we didn't have any contact with the people doing the illegal things, our software did, and that's on us.
See, that's fucking scary.
That's
free speech.
Correct.
Right? Code is speech. You wrote code and you released it to the open market. It's like publishing a design for a knife online and someone uses it and stabs someone. It's like,
which they're going after, right? You have like ghost guns being 3D printed and they really want to make sure we can't do that.
Yeah.
I just watched a YouTube video about that the other day. I believe the 3D printers are starting to have software in them that prevent you from making ghost guns.
Wow.
Yeah. Just like the large centralized exchanges are all running chain analysis or elliptic, which is a new one. And it scans all of your transactions and then grades your wallets to decide if they are shady or not.
Really?
Crazy.
Yes.
So the Samurai developers, that's going to set case precedent.
Correct.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's not great. It's a really tough.
That didn't go to the Supreme Court, though.
It did not.
Yeah. That's going to be a free speech issue at some point. I
do believe that part of their plea agreement was that they are not allowed to appeal.
Of course.
Right.
Because if it goes to the Constitution, they're going to win.
And then how does Albrook being pardoned affect all of that?
I mean, we freed Ross, right? So like people have said like, wow, I can't believe I voted. I'm like, well, it was not for nothing, right? We ended Choke Point 2.0. Ross is free. I mean, we would have been literally living under communism. So let's be realistic about the fact that we changed courses. And not let like perfect be the enemy of better. Ross being freed, I think that happened long enough ago, and the way that he was charged, they went after him in a really aggressive way. They framed him for some stuff. He'd been charged with some stuff that they had no evidence for. They actually had whistleblowers from the Justice Department who came out eventually and admitted, yeah, we made this shit up. So the case for freeing Ross was really, really strong. And so I don't know that we set with that a really strong precedent. Obviously, we gave Ross his life back and his family, and that's all incredible. But I don't know that it set a strong precedent in terms of like future reference to the case.
Is it possible that Trump is going to implement the same strategies, or is he going after the same thing just in a different way? Because I have a good buddy who shits on Trump all the time. And he's like, look, the most tyrannical, crazy experience I've ever had in my life was when Trump was in office. And so it's like you see this back and forth game, like where the left takes away a certain set of rights that the supporters of the left are okay with. And then you got the right comes in and they take away the other half of the rights. So this back and forth game. I mean, do you think this is something we're dealing with now, or you think Trump is not one of the insiders? And
I think there's no perfection in politics, right? Trump is just a person. I personally believe that he is well-intentioned. He wants to see the country better off. And I give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Ultimately, he's still a politician. I think, there is absolutely in DC this cooperation behind the scenes of, you call it the deep state, call it whatever you want, but you have both sides cooperating. And I think rightfully so. That's why a lot of people don't want to be involved, feel like there's no reason to be involved. I was one of those people up until 2020. I mean, I was in DC. I was like active in the Tea Party movement. I never voted until 2020. I've not been this like lifelong, I was leave me alone. Like I just leave me alone until they came for me and they came for my job and they came for our industry. And so what do you do but to fight back? And so I have learned through that process, I have come to believe, I think that apathy is actually the psyop, and that getting people to believe that they can't make a difference has been a psyop, and that people need to stand up and take responsibility back. And, I think Trump is perfect, that he's going to solve all of these things. Absolutely not. I mean, the idea of that is completely absurd. But what I do believe that we could do is that we could continue to be involved, and that we could continue to choose people that will push things and make decisions going in the right direction, right? And so we're directionally correct versus directionally going further and further towards communism. We could continue to be engaged and choose people that go and make these rules. I mean, if you're going to live in a country and you're going to follow its rules, like, do you want communists making those rules? Or do you want people who believe at least in some idea or semblance of freedom making those rules? And so I don't believe that Trump is going to fix it all. I think there's definitely like serious things that are happening, but I don't think the answer is to just say, well, fuck it, I don't care, none of it's going to make a difference. I think we can continue directionally to push in the correct direction.
I mean, the problem is mathematics. You cannot have one ape.
Of the people.
We can't have one ape to rule 330 million apes.
Right.
The math don't math.
I know.
Like it does not math.
This is
so until we have a president that's like, you know what, I'm going to run on a platform of there being no more presidents. And like we'll localize all this shit and you guys just vote for your local state representative and that will be the guy that governs most of your life. And then you've got people, cohorts of, 100,000 to a few million people voting locally for the guy.
Yes.
That's the guy that matters. And if you don't like your guy, well then you got 49 other guys to choose from.
Right.
Until we have that guy running on that platform, I'm going to abolish the Fed. I'm going to abolish the IRS, and you're not going to care about the next president because I'm going to abolish the presidential election. That's the guy. I am down
for that. I actually think that the best path forward. So that is all of that is under the presumption that we continue with this normalcy but if you want to know what I really think should happen, I actually think it's time for the United States to Balkanize, and that's sort of the solution, that you're referring to.
Because the president is the choke point, basically. It's like, we get 2 options every 4 to 8 years. And like, that's how we run 330 million people in the most powerful nation that ever existed. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
And they're not following the Constitution. We're long gone from following the Constitution. They're not abiding by this idea of a republic. It has become mob rule by,
tyranny of the majority.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, I actually, if I really am going to vote, I'm going to vote for balkanizing. Yeah. But
I guess that's scary for people, though.
It's really scary for people.
It's clearly the right answer.
Right.
It's like it's going to be so much better for you and your children and their children.
My argument really is just if you're unwilling to stand by balkanizing and that's too scary for you, then at least freaking vote for someone that's not a communist. Please. Like, is that really too much for us to do? And I came to this conviction during COVID, being in Florida, seeing how much of a difference our lives were versus, you know, I had friends in family in Pennsylvania, California. You saw what a massive difference, like, having a governor that actually believed in freedom made. And then, of course, going in and working in Bitcoin and the assault on the industry. So that was like a 1-2 punch for me to say, like, all right, fine, we have to be involved in this. But, you know, I don't disagree with any of your...
As someone that doesn't vote.
Right.
It is complicated, though.
Yeah.
Because you don't want all the blue-haired people voting.
Right. Like,
then
do
you end
you
up
want
with
them to rule your life?
I know. So then you're like, well, shit, I need to go vote. I don't vote again. But I do feel the pressure, and I understand it to some extent, but I'm still just stuck on, I guess, the idealism that I'm like, this, it doesn't matter who you put in that position.
Right.
The math will never math.
But for DeSantis being in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, can we agree that it is important for him to have been in charge of the state?
And not Newsom.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, and so if enough people decide, well, I'm not going to vote at all for anything, like, don't vote for the president. You know, that's a clown show. I get it.
Right.
But like, somewhere it matters.
Yeah. Make politics ideally should be a local affair.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. Once you get to this large centralized thing, then it's a complete shit show, right? Like you're never going to meet Trump. He doesn't care about you. You're a row on a spreadsheet to him. Yeah. But the more local it is, the more likely you are to have empathy between humans. Like you might actually shake this guy's hand or run a business that he's actually interested in maintaining over time. So it's just the whole Bitcoin ethos of decentralize everything.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, there's all that about voting, but then I still think where you put your purchasing power is the most important vote, period.
I agree with that.
So you just vote against all of it by buying Bitcoin.
Yes.
You're boycotting the entire system. You're just taking all your energy out of that system by just holding Bitcoin.
Don't give them your money. Don't keep it in the bank. Don't do the 401k shit. Yeah. Take all of your money out. Yeah. And that is the most important. I agree with that.
One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. Knowing when to buy Bitcoin can feel complicated, and knowing how much to buy can be overwhelming, and getting started can be a headache, but it doesn't have to be. That's exactly why I recommend Coinbits, because it solves these major blockers and it's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. With Coinbits' Round Ups feature, you can automatically convert your spare change into Bitcoin while you shop. For example, when you buy a coffee for $3.50, the extra 50 cents is rounded up and it goes straight into Bitcoin. Here's why that's a huge win for you, because you don't have to be a tech wizard or try to time the market just right with Bitcoin. With Coinbits Roundups, you simply set it, shop, and stack sats. And you can set this up in under 2 minutes. Just visit the website, connect your card, and boom, you're buying a little Bitcoin every time you spend money. So stop wasting your time with complicated exchanges or confusing shitcoin apps. Coinbits simplifies your Bitcoin savings strategy. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove. Again, that's coinbits.app/breedlove.
I'd like to see I want our president to be somebody who doesn't want to be the president.
Yeah.
It's like, it's vote for me. I'm like, fuck that guy. He wants this position of power. Something's wrong with him.
That's exactly what Plato said. He's like, that's what the philosopher kings were. He's like, you got to go and the guy that doesn't want to do it, you got to go and coerce him to do it.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's an idea. It like goes against all my libertarian values, but there does kind of make sense.
We should force for freedom. We should force the guy who doesn't want to be president to be president.
Exactly.
And can you just make him a king so we live under monarchy?
Yeah.
Like, just go for it.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I don't know how we get another George Washington, right? Like maybe the answer was George Washington. No, it's not, because had he been the king, even if he was a great king, and maybe his son was a great king, well, you know his grandson's going to start teetering on that edge of shitty king, or what it's going to happen eventually.
All empires fall.
Yeah.
And so I think we're there.
Yeah.
All fiat currencies fail. We're also there.
Yeah.
Do you think this all blows up, fails catastrophically, or do you think that there's like a smooth transition? Now that the Trojan horse of freedom is in the castle, what are your thoughts on how this unfolds?
I think we're seeing an acceleration of the slow and steady. You know, they printed a shit ton of money during COVID, and they're going to print a lot more money. And so the dollar is in rapid decline, and they've got things propped up for now, but I think that keeping things propped up is going to get increasingly difficult. And it's not good. If you're in dollars, if you live in the dollar world, life is not going to be good for you.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it, honestly.
Yeah.
I was at the grocery store the other day with my wife, and a piece of cheese is like $12. I'm like, how? Like, thank God we don't have to be that concerned about it, but it's like, I'm like, if you were just living on a normal fucking salary and now a piece of cheese is $12, like how? What? That's wrecking your life.
Yeah,
well, that's why people can't quit jobs that they hate, or get out of like organizations where they know that this is fucked. Yeah. This is all a lie, but I got to buy $12 cheese.
Right.
So what can I do?
And granted, we were at like the nice grocery store. It's a nice piece of cheese and all that. But like, if you were just on a normal salary, taking your 2 or 3% annual raise, or 10, even 10, 20% wouldn't be enough. It's like, you're just getting pushed out of Whole Foods into McDonald's, basically. And what, like that's...
Well, I just read something that $200,000 is now your middle class. So, think about that. Like, I think also they had done the math on in order to be making the equivalent of a pre-COVID 100K salary, you needed to be making $124,000 in today's dollars. That was actually 2 years. It was 2023. So, we're all, I was growing up thinking, let me get to a 6-figure salary, and then you've made it, right? Or you're living well.
Yeah.
And that is not the case anymore. I mean, people making $150,000 a year are struggling to survive. So it has very, very real impacts on lives. And I think, our social media feeds, mine is flooded with people who can't afford groceries, people with good jobs, like, that should be upper middle class, and they're struggling really, really hard. And I think it's going to be very painful. We're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah, it's terrible. And even if like you're eating a good diet, I think the cost of ground beef, the steak that I like to buy has tripled in price in the past 5 years. The ground beef has probably doubled. So like if you're trying to eat that diet, then Whole Foods obviously is one of your main expenses. Your cost of living has doubled or tripled in 5 years. Maybe not exactly that, but it's around that. And so, and even though we do this for a living and we talk about this all the time, I'm complaining to him all the time. I'm like, the prices just don't make sense.
Right.
I can't compute it in my head. Like, what do you mean? My oil change is $300.
Dude,
like,
I was in the back office like 2-3 weeks ago. He was buying plane tickets. His head was about to fucking explode. I just got my oil changed on my Ford pickup truck. It's $100,000, by the way, to just get a diesel Ford fucking pickup truck.
Wow.
$100,000. The oil change was $250. $250. The guy at the store, I'm like, this is $250. He goes, how much was it in California? I was like, I don't know. I paid the guy down the street who was a diesel mechanic to do it, but I mean.
Right. Meanwhile, you have very real solutions, right? Toyota makes this awesome $10,000 truck.
Yeah,
you guys are probably more familiar with it than me, but we're not allowed to have it because of regulation.
I know.
So it's all it's all a scam.
Well, yeah, Toyota makes banging diesel vehicles in most of the world.
Right, but we can't have them.
Ford, dude.
You got to pay $100,000 for a Ford.
Yeah.
Right.
But the tariffs will fix it, right?
Oh, yes.
Again, another testament to like economic ignorance of fiat politicians that you're going to pass, and Trump tweets this shit.
Yeah.
Oh, now our, other nations are paying this tax bill for Americans. Like, you fucking retard. Like, they're importing goods to your people. How do you think they're going to pay for the tariff? They're going to increase prices to consumers.
Right.
So
there's some boomer in his.
Well, it's just all, it's just again, I say we're in the economic dark ages. Hopefully we're awakening from it thanks to Bitcoin. But this whole idea that we can politically pull levers and change economies is like, no, you can't. You can only make it worse. That's the only thing you can do. You can block the free market and you can make things more expensive and increase scarcity. There's nothing else a politician can do other than like get out of the way. That's the only way you can improve situations. There's no law you can pass that's going to improve the economy.
No, we need to get rid of.
You can only abolish laws. Yes.
Yeah. And for every law that they pass, they create roughly 20 new pieces of regulation that have to be followed. Yeah. So like everything needs to be deregulated.
Yeah. More paperwork. Right. Harder for the small business to compete.
Yeah.
More centralization, more corruption. And you just end up living in fiat world.
Yeah. Struggling to survive on your $200,000.
Do you see this guy being president? That's what I'm thinking this whole time.
The harder you double down on, don't do that to me.
How about just leader of Florida? I think we should make Florida like Bitcoin
the
country.
Look on his face. That's the I'll vote for
terrified.
that guy look. So that's the last thing I want.
Well, that's the thing is no.
This is real terror. You thought of that.
Next topic, please.
Oh, yeah. Funny. So you think Trump is benevolent? I think about Trump a lot.
I don't think he's evil.
So you were circling with or socializing with people who were very adverse to his presidency initially, which when the legacy media people are like freaking out about Trump, it gives me that feeling of like, oh, wait a second, this guy's an outsider.
He can't be that bad.
Right. Maybe we want that.
Right.
I personally think that he's just so full of himself and so into being Trump that like it's possible that he does really good things because he wants to just be in the history books as the guy who's done good things.
I lean more towards that. I mean, I don't think he's benevolent. I don't think he's perfect. There's a lot of things I really strongly disagree with. But, it kind of goes back to this idea of like, it's okay that I don't agree with all of his opinions because I didn't want to live under communism. So like, I mean, I think people, again, are just really, really not ready and willing to accept how close we were to really very serious, like, communist rule. I mean, they didn't even, on the other side, there was no democratic process to pick Kamala. They just installed her. And then her VP pick was literally groomed by the CCP. I mean, they came this close to installing at the highest level. And some Bitcoiners say, well, that would be good because then everything would just collapse. And I'm fine with that too. Fine, then collapse everything. But let's do it well. Let's balkanize,
When Biden disappeared, it's like what the meme where he like goes and disappears into the bushes.
Right.
And they put Kamala in place. I was like, oh, we're being fucking psyoped into getting Trump. There's no way on earth Kamala is going to win.
Right.
Some evil diabolical overlords just served us up Trump and we all think we're going to win by getting this guy. It made me very skeptical. I'm like, there's just no way. What do you mean? Like, let's get Gavin Newsom in here with his beautiful hair or something. Somebody who's got a chance. Kamala has got no fucking chance to be president.
Right.
We're getting psyoped. Trump's going to come in and take away all our freedoms.
Are you on the like Whitney Webb rabbit hole of they're designing this whole control grid?
Because maybe I'm just fucked in the head, but like I'm spiritual, quantum. I'm like, and I think of at times every once in a while this pops into my head. I remember I think it was like a hodl hang. You, Kaysen, Valis and American Hodl are talking, and Kaysen's talking about like key extraction camps and the gulags, and you're like, I'm not living in any fucking camp. And it was just the way you said it. I was like, he so firmly believes that. Like I just I'm gonna just tune my vibration and frequency like that. I'm gonna go down a different timeline. Right. Like Whitney Webb, like, you know, after you take the black pill, you realize that then the orange pill is available for you. And like, you know, maybe we have a bumpy ride, but I am one of those people that's like, this is checkmate. 21 million doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
And I like to think that to get to the other side of all of this, we're going to have a smooth transition. And I have like, I don't know, some logical theses or ideas around how we move from this like totally detached lunacy of the fiat mess that we have onto a Bitcoin standard. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically I just try to make sure that I'm not focusing on doom and gloom all day. Cause at the very least, it just feels shitty.
It's terrible.
And so I'd rather, as crazy as to say, I'd rather be delusional and feel well than like be right and miserable. So
hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
it's difficult. It's a difficult balance to strike when you're in the Bitcoin rabbit hole.
Yeah,
because you end up looking at a lot of dark eras in human history, which there's plenty to choose from. So I've had Whitney Webb on the show before, but I don't know if I'm familiar entirely with this rabbit hole. Like, what does she thinks is all controlled opposition after controlled opposition?
Oh yeah. Here, you unpack this.
And then it's all politicians are puppets being played by puppet masters.
But there's this whole other level of technocracy.
Okay.
And so she's done this deep dive on Vance and his grooming by Peter Thiel and Elon's involvement. And I honestly I've kind of refrained from going too deep in it because I can't find anywhere where she's wrong, right? And I don't want to end up that black pilled. So I'm with you in terms of just like ignorance is bliss. I think we can fight it. I think, you know, there are a lot of us that just are not going to participate. Like I'll go back to living without a cell phone. I have no problem with that. Like, you know, there's no tracking in my car. There's no smart devices in my house. Like we can absolutely fight back against this. I do think that it is somewhat inevitable for the masses. These surveillance systems are already in place, and they're just dialing them up. So I think she believes in more of like a puppeteering that a lot of this is done on purpose and maybe, you know, that Trump was installed and to cooperate with these people. I don't know how much of that I believe. I just I choose not to because I didn't want to live under communism. So
she seems to think that Bitcoin's been co-opted or being co-opted.
She does.
And when I listen to Whitney Webb, it's been a while since I've listened to one of her interviews and I forget whose channel it was on, but it does remind me there's like a theme. It was the first time Booth was on Gammon's channel. George Gammon and Jeff Booth had a conversation and it essentially went like this. Gammon saying the government's going to corrupt it and Booth says how? Oh, they're going to print how? You can only corrupt a layer on top of it, some sort of derivative system. And so Gammon's like, the governments are going to do what governments do. And Booth's like, how? They've essentially, I think they've had 2 conversations since then. Gammon's then come back around. And so when I listen to Whitney Webb, I still am kind of like, well, maybe she's right.
Yeah.
But then I'll just live in some dust bowl, dirt, Mad Max corner of the world somewhere where we can trade in Bitcoin, with, you know, like, and use open source Lightning and I can, you know, buy someone's worn out cargo pants and some...
You know what I mean? Like, all right, cool. Because fuck that. I'm not going to the bug eating citadel.
Right.
I'll live out here in Freedom Land and use the main chain. So it's like, you know, I hear what Whitney Webb has to say, but at the same time, I'm like, you understand this is an incorruptible ledger and all the corruption can just exist on top of that.
So that would be my question is how. And then my other question is when people get super into that dark rabbit hole, it's like, well, what are we supposed to do about it?
There's no solution being offered.
You've got to offer some sequence of actions at the bottom of that. Otherwise, you're just nihilistic.
Totally.
Yeah, it is really.
So does she offer? She offers nothing?
Not really.
I'm going to say no, but I'm not Whitney Webb obsessed.
Yeah.
I feel gross after I feel hopeless after listening to her.
I will say with the you know, somebody said like, oh, CIA created it. I'm like, well, DARPA created the internet and we use it all day, every day. Yeah. You know, like, and to be honest, I do believe that. Like, I think there is a lot of evidence. I mean, it's generally accepted as fact that the internet started as a DARPA project. And here we are, alive and well and thriving. We know how to use the internet freely. Maybe we have extra tools if we live in an extra authoritarian regime. But I continually go back to that even if that is all correct and, you know, we have CIA coin, well, you know, we have DARPA internet and it's great.
Well, it could have been a bunch of rogue agents that created a thing to shut down this corrupt system that they were a part of. It doesn't even matter if the CIA made it or Satoshi is the returning of Christ or anything in between. It makes no fucking difference.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, because it wouldn't matter. Because if they're renegade, well, okay, great, they're renegade. If they're not, and they're really trying to like control Bitcoin or use Bitcoin to control people or whatever, it's like, all right, well, the cat's out of the bag and it doesn't do that now. And so when someone like Whitney Webb says it's being co-opted, like, okay, well, where's the 21 million in first Bitcoin at? Right? Where's the 26? Like when I see the supply cap actually broken and there's an actual fragmentation of the social contract and there's people, you know, and that, by the way, it has happened. Bitcoin has survived it, but it could go through it again. But those are the only things that can actually, quote unquote, break Bitcoin. It's like, as you said, 21 million doesn't care until that proves to be broken. Then we don't care.
The one thing that she like tugs on that I do share a concern with is this idea or the very real implications of the fiat regulations being applied onto the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so for like, what does that even mean, right? Most people's Bitcoin, especially if you're newer to Bitcoin, is KYC'd. And so she talks a lot about how surveillable it is. And that is true. I will say that's actually one of the only things that I was ever nervous about saying out loud is that if all of our Bitcoin is 100% KYC'd and we have only centralized on and off ramps, then it looks a lot like a CBDC, right? But that's not the case. And that's the only thing I will say. I think it's important that people pay mind to and are aware of, and we kind of make sure to be continually fighting. Like if you want to talk about abolishing things, let's abolish the BSA, Bank Secrecy Act. This is why we have KYC AML. So when the United States balkanizes, like let's do away with the BSA, and then we're really back into like it's just all freedom.
Yeah, these are all extensions of the Fed, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
FinCEN, all of that. And then people do need to take. I mean, the way I would look at this is that if all of the chain is surveyed and everyone's been KYC'd, let's just say all the Bitcoin addresses are associated with an individual identity and everything's traced and tracked. Well, once they start to act on that information, whether that be taxing, incarcerate, whatever they're doing to people using that information, then you're creating more demand for anonymity tech. The anonymity tech already exists. You can go and obfuscate that relationship right now.
Right.
Wasabi and all these things, even though they've been attacked, like they're still active, you can still use it.
Yeah.
So when you start to try and squeeze people in that way, well, they inevitably, some of them slip between your fingers. The state doing the squeezing here, and people flow into this anonymity tech. You create more demand for it. And then before you know it, you get people with their Bitcoin living the Mad Max lifestyle, buying used cargo shorts in the desert or whatever. But it's like
with the VPN.
So it's like even if you take that extreme case where it's all traced and tracked, it doesn't mean it's over. It's like, well, once they start using that information to coerce people, well, then you're going to create this sub cohort of Bitcoiners that are obfuscated.
Well, it's logical to think that that's the next step. Is figure out what comes to mind too is I think it was Edward Snowden did a Zoom keynote at a Bitcoin conference. And he's like really concerned about the privacy.
Yeah.
Well, part of what makes Bitcoin work is that it's this free and open ledger. So you can't have total anonymity with Bitcoin. You need that open ledger, right?
You can't have the anonymity and 21 million at the same layer. Right. It's like a fundamental computer science trade-off. It's what Monero suffers from.
Yeah.
It has perfect anonymity, but it doesn't have supply guarantee.
And the governments or overlords or regulators or the mix of all of those together, they still have the same economic problem that we do at the individual level that Bitcoin does solve. So it is interesting that, like, you know, if you're trading with another nation state, you don't want to be on the receiving end of an unfair deal. Bitcoin solves that. And so they're combating people using something that allows them to escape the tyranny imposed by the governments, but this thing that they're combating solves problems that the government has.
Yeah, no government wants to settle with another government's shitcoin.
Totally.
That's why only the global superpower U.S. government imperialism is required to force people at the muzzle of a gun to settle in dollars. Bitcoin gives you a neutral settlement layer, basically. So it's a game theoretic optimal. But I don't know. Are nation states ever going to get to that point? Like, I don't know.
Petro BTC.
Petro BTC. Hear me out.
No, well, the petrodollar agreement expired.
Yeah.
So Petro BTC, the world is going to de-dollarize. That's my thesis.
I think it's all, I mean, again, so it was once pegged to gold. Gold is a proxy for the energy necessary to produce it, right? So it's a proof of work asset. That's what made the dollar a proof of work coin. And then you peg to gold. You have to repeg to something else. Yeah. Black gold in the case of oil. Okay. We're depegging to that. Bitcoin is that thing. It's just monetized energy. That's the whole point. So again, I don't know at what rate or in what sequence people arrive at this conclusion, but it seems abundantly clear, at least this far down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, that Bitcoin solves this fundamental problem that all humans have struggled with since the beginning of time. And only 0.1% of people know that at this point. So how that revelation dawns on the other 99.9% is interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, that's another reason why I don't spend much time being scared. Because like if you could line up every one of my ancestors since the beginning of time, I told any of them, hey, I got this inviolable form of metaphysical invisible property and the world is challenging and I'm really scared, they'd fucking slap me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, so,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The individual has never had higher leverage or more empowerment than right now. So if you're a scared individual, it's like, well, respect your fucking ancestors, bro. Totally. We worked really hard to get you here.
Spending eternity trying to prevent themselves from being killed and stolen from. And you could get killed, but they don't get your shit and you're scared?
Talk about a win-win.
Yeah.
So there's a very special place called the Farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000-acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you. If you're a Bitcoiner, you need the Orange Pill app. It's where you can connect with other sovereign individuals locally and globally. It's great for when you travel, to meet local Bitcoiners, to go to Bitcoin meetups, and to find local merchants that accept sats. No distractions, no noise, just real Bitcoiners. So download the Orange Pill app today and find your local Bitcoin tribe.
Bitcoin ATMs.
Yes.
Jump topics. That's an interesting one. When I discovered a Bitcoin ATM in the town that I was in many years ago, I had the epiphany moment of like, oh, I grow cannabis. I'm predominantly cash based. I have some banking impedance. Like, I'm just going to spend the next couple of months just frequenting this ATM. Then I realized the fees were really high and I'd rather just put it into the bank.
Yes.
So I did. But so how is that business going, or what are some interesting insights? Because I did have a couple conversations with Paul in March when I was in Sarasota.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting stuff there.
It's super interesting. I knew that cash was under attack before I worked at Byte Federal in Bitcoin. but I didn't know the degree to which it was under attack. We obviously had problems because of Choke Point 2.0, but our biggest problems are cash related. The government does not like cash businesses. They do not want you to be able to transact in cash. And, you know, why is obvious, because if they can eliminate cash, then you have a digital dollar, you have a CBDC, you don't have to do anything else. So it's a really interesting business to be part of. That's largely the reason for the serious fees, is because cash businesses and the logistics of a cash business are super complicated. And unfortunately, that's just expensive to deal with. But they do serve a purpose. And, you know, we were talking about older folks bringing cash to an ATM and being familiar with this process of like putting your dollars in and receiving something on a ledger somewhere. So I think that's super cool. It really meets the needs of especially the older generations that are really familiar with that process, maybe not as excited about like taking their phone and just do like whizzing their internet money around, but having a place to go. So it's been great. We're working on some digital products, and we are always battling regulation. We are seeing, I don't want to say a divide in states, but there kind of has been. So post-regime change, we had a lot of states back off the assault on the industry and just sort of let us do business. There are a handful of states that have continued their regulatory assault against Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin ATMs really specifically.
Is it mostly blue states?
It's mostly blue states, yeah. We're pulling out completely of a handful of states. You see them dialing up regulation, making the cost of doing business, you know, the math doesn't math. It's just you can't do business in some of the states. And so that's really unfortunate. But I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, that I think personally that those states need to deal with their own regulation. I mean, the Bitcoiners in those states are going to be facing more and more products that they don't have access to. So a lot of Bitcoin products are not accessible if you are a New York resident. Our ATMs, for example, a lot of the digital wallets even. And the reason for that is that New York uniquely has this thing called a bit license. It's a very specific license that you have to have in order to operate in the state or to even service anyone who is a resident of the state. It's a very, very difficult license to obtain. And there is there's a component to it where they just pick and choose. If they don't like you, they're not going to issue you a bit license. It's not like you have to meet a certain set of criteria and here you go. There is this like black box factor. So I think as this all plays out, we're going to continue to see a divide in the states similar to during COVID. You know, we saw some states really complying with this federal decree of like lockdowns and things like that. And then some states like Florida saying we're not doing that. So I see a similar thing playing out in Bitcoin. And it'll be interesting to watch. And I hope that Bitcoiners will either flee those states and that they will suffer economically, or they will fight back and take control back of their states. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Never did I think that I would become an expert in alphabet regulation, FinCEN, KYC, AML.
That any human being in this country could possibly believe we're living in a free market economy when the number one cost of doing business is trying to obtain this license.
Regulation.
Literally a permission slip to do business from the state. You're going to pay them to give you permission to do business.
It's obscene.
I love the definition. I think there's a meme I saw. It's business license is when the state takes away your right to do business and sells it back to you. Mm-hmm.
Very
it's
accurate.
Truly fucking crazy when you think about it that way.
Yeah. And it's not just, oh, here's my money, please give me my license. No. It's here's my lawyer, here's my compliance officer, here's my comptroller, here's my regulator, here's my other lawyer, here's this type of lawyer, here's my entire team to spend their entire lives filling out your forms. Talk about soul-crushing jobs. Yeah, right? Exactly. I'm spending my whole life for money that gets printed from nowhere to fill out forms so that we can continue to do business.
Right. Zero value add whatsoever. It's all just parasitic on business.
It is.
And the fact that that's the norm.
Yeah.
Like, how could you call that a free market economy?
It's not.
Free market economy, you just go and open a business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like my experience in the cannabis business. The hurdles that I had to jump through to just grow a plant and to sell it to people who wanted it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Very similar challenges.
It's a difficult thing to accept, you know? You really want to believe all the propaganda. Like, oh yeah, we're free and blah, 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 but it's just not the case.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I said when I got back to the States in 2018, I said, you know, I came and the news was so propagandized and people were so polarized, pro or for or against Trump. And it was really jarring to me. Like CNN was like constantly running breaking news, you know, and I was trying to reacclimate to being in the US. And I started saying to people like, at least they're honest in China. Mm-hmm. At least they're honest about their propaganda. And man, does that piss people off.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I stand by that, you know?
Yeah. I've seen this also a meme, but it was like, and a Chinese person saw an American person and they thought it was very funny that they were watching the news and taking it seriously.
Right.
And I said, well, everyone in China knows that mainstream media is propaganda and they don't take it seriously.
You just don't watch it. Right.
Yeah. And, and so, yeah, I don't know. It's again, we're conditioned to not think that that we're somehow exceptional and we're different than China and all these other countries. But like, no, the mainstream media is bought and controlled. All of these legal impediments to business are the same thing they use in authoritarian countries, and we're not the leader of the free world. We're just the current superpower that's in power, basically. Kind of a last or getting towards the end here, like it seems like you went through a spiritual journey. I mean, you jumped into this domain of foreign direct investment and it may have seemed like a shiny object from a distance, you know, big salary, big title, international travel, whatever. And then you get into it and you're like, oh wait, this is all bullshit. You know, you had the little glimmer of it at the beginning where they sort of over embellished your resume or whatever it was. And then you got to see it more deeply. And then you also said you got sick at some point, which I just feel like can't be a coincidence.
No.
I know when you're, you know, doing things that you hate, it's much more likely that your body's going to be not agreeing with that. So what has that spiritual arc been for you? I guess going from outside of this business into the belly of the beast, so to speak, and then coming out the other side and getting into Bitcoin. Like, how has your life changed?
Dramatically. And it's not, you know, it's certainly not been a straight path. There were really like deep, dark times where I was really black-pilled and really desperate for solutions and unsure if there were solutions and just like full of doom. But I always came back to Bitcoin and Bitcoin really did give me hope over and over, multiple different times through the journey that I went through. I think it represents so many different things to so many different people. Depending where you are in this journey, you might need money. You might need for the number to go up. You might need finances to pay your bills so that you're not enslaved to these people. You might also need the community. You know, post-COVID, before I was online on Twitter, I had come back to the States. I had very few people in my life. And the Bitcoin community really provided like a whole new layer of community and I think faith for me in people again, that the whole world was not corrupt in this way. So it has been a spiritual journey. You know, I grew up, we went to church a little bit, but I wouldn't say that my parents were like overly religious. And then I, you know, kind of just in my 20s and 30s was working and not really religious. But I think there is something about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin journey down the rabbit hole that brings you back to the meaning of life and the fact that there must be something bigger and that we have to, not that we have to, but there is all of this evidence of something greater and bigger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I certainly believe that. And that gives me hope every day.
Yeah. It's, even if that something bigger is just you being a really small part of the whole human world, right? And that you can contribute to it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even need to get theological or people, whatever. I always try to avoid, because God is such a trigger word for people. So when I say spiritual, I'm not actually invoking God. It's more like the substance of your experience, basically. Yeah. And Bitcoin does seem to give people that renewed sense of optimism or meaning just by virtue of, I don't know, peeling back the layers and then maybe giving you a way to contribute to something that actually helps other people into the future.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that that's a common theme when I ask people that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one on our list here that I think is pretty interesting. So you've argued that fiat culture feminizes society and then weaponizes those traits. What does a healthy masculine feminine cultural dynamic look like on the other side of fiat?
Oh boy. Well, so this does come up a lot in Bitcoin, right? I believe I have never really identified myself as like a feminist, whatever, for whatever that has meant over the years. Mostly because I didn't ever believe in like demonizing men. Like I loved my dad and my brothers and my
that's why you couldn't fall for it.
It sounds really crazy, but I think that people, like men and women, are equal, but we are different.
Two halves of a whole.
Yeah. I think both, like there is masculine and feminine, and that both energies are really important. You have the Tao here on the wall, and there is something in the Tao that says, there is nothing stronger than water. And I forget, the exact quote escapes me, but basically like for conquering the strong, you have to be soft.
And then a river cuts stone, not because of its power, but because of its persistence.
Yeah.
As one of them. Yeah.
And so it's this idea that like, in order to cut through something that's very strong, you have to be soft, and vice versa. In order to be truly strong and like truly masculine, you have to be able to also be soft. And so I think, there's a crisis of, there's not what do they call it? Patriarchy and like a crisis of masculinity or some nonsense that the left has gone really off on. And I think it's not that there's a crisis of toxic masculinity. I think it's a lack of masculinity that the world is suffering from. And strong figures that are willing to stand up and to be honest and fight back against the corrupted systems and say, this is not okay. And to do so in a strong and masculine way where it's not, toxic masculinity come and kick your ass. Real true masculinity is just going to come and say this is unacceptable and then like calmly walk away, right? And so the world needs more of that. And I think it goes back to like weak men create hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times. And I believe in that very much. I think we're at a turning point there.
Is it the weak men? Do you think we have this excess of weak men because of that fiat currency warping the soul situation we described much earlier in the conversation? Like, are we more incentivized to be weak men because of fiat currency?
I think so, because I think ultimately the game is that people are trying to acquire more fiat currency so they can buy the $12 cheese, right? Or take the girl out on the date or whatever it is. And you need money. And right now people's money is fiat currency. You need that. And so they're forced to participate and to go to the soul-sucking job and to agree with the HR lady and, oh, now we're putting pronouns in our bios and I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm not going to stand up to it because like, I don't want to lose my job. It weakens people and crushes their souls.
Well, I think of the guy too doing the endless forms for the bit license in New York. It's like, if you did that for 10 years, you're guaranteed to be a weak ass dude by the end of that.
Right. Like go to New York, become a congressman, abolish the bit license, right? I know you don't want to be in politics, but like this would be, all right, maybe not you, but you know, if someone goes and does this, like this would actually be real functional strength, you know, to abolish the bit license completely versus just everyone sitting around complying with it, I think is weak and...
Yeah, leadership aimed at reducing suffering rather than profiting from suffering, which is kind of like the Fiat thing that I guess I was asking about is the Klaus Schwabs of the world. Insert your favorite politician. These guys are getting rich, creating problems for other people. They're not solving problems for anyone, unlike entrepreneurs.
Right.
So it's like, of course it creates more weak men because you can get rich by being a weak man. That's a problem. That's a real problem.
Well, in order to implement these things too, you need to like domesticate and effectively like castrate the men in the society because they're the ones who are going to stand up and protect and be like, hey, you know what? You get fucked. We're not doing this stuff.
Right.
But if they're being bombarded with a bunch of chemicals and hormones or whatever, you know, it's like
being disagreeable is really bad for towing the party line.
Yeah.
Right.
So got to get rid of those men.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think feminism, my mother was a self-proclaimed feminist who ironically spent her entire life dependent upon men. So I was kind of open to this feminism concept at a very young age. I think it's really bad because the attack vector to break up the family, that divine feminine masculine union was the female, and now in some ways it almost seems like women are suffering more, but societally we're struggling.
Yeah.
But there's been this huge divide, and it seems to coincide the detachment from gold in 1971. You get two parties working, then the children are now being indoctrinated by the state at school.
Right.
Then everybody's all fucked up. They're not together. You know, divorce rates are through the roof.
Well, and women are forced into their masculine too. When you put them into the workforce, it's like they have to step into that assertive role.
And men don't know how to be masculine. Yeah, I found even in my own journey as a man, I'm like, I kind of don't know how to be. Like, do I stand up and do I claim what I want, or am I being toxic? Is that too much? Like, you know, how do I lead and direct, but not make sure I'm not dictating or it's like, it's just like kind of murky thing.
Like, you really don't want to put those pronouns in my profile.
Please do not do that.
Anyone either.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't obviously. I struggle with the opposite, right? Like I've always been a tomboy and people will give me shit. I'm like, well, I'm a little bit of a tomboy, but I have never ever once in my life thought that I was not a woman. Like, you know, there's still a place for balancing, I think, masculine and feminine energy. And I think we're all trying to figure it out. But I do think everyone is suffering because there's so much confusion around this. Yeah. And I think the more that I've studied like the cultural Marxism we've referenced several times, you know, one of their pillars is to destroy the nuclear family. Yes. And I think that's so important to like bring the nuclear family back. And you can have exceptions. Okay, fine. But, you know, the nuclear family is extremely important in so many ways, like in our own lives and for society. Yes. And you can't have that without feminine and masculine roles.
Exactly. Integrated together. A number of things you said there are very important. We should talk to James Lindsay again. You may have not heard him. He says feminism is a product of cultural Marxism. Like I believe literally that it was on purpose. Yeah, the same thing, repackaged, same thing. And it's also important to recognize too, when we have these conversations, I think a lot of people get really laser focused, like masculine equals men, feminine equals women. Like that's not true. We're both, it's like the yin and the yang. You mentioned Taoism earlier. It's a principle of reality. And we have both living inside of us, right? We all have a balance of masculine and feminine. Doesn't mean that as a man, every situation you have to be assertive and dominant. Like, as you said, oftentimes you need to be receptive.
Yeah.
There's times when my wife is coming at me with some really masculine daggers out of her mouth, and I need to be very receptive and very calm
and feel it.
Yeah, and I need to go into my feminine. And so people, I don't know, we need to look at it more like that, because if you think it's just 1-to-1, then it's always fighting men versus women. It's like, that's not what it is. This is a harmony of energies that exist all throughout nature.
Right.
And we're all trying to find that sweet spot, I guess.
Yeah. Come back together. It seems to just be this force just dividing every aspect of our society.
Yeah, it's true. You've got the fiat currency and drugs, not only street drugs, but they put all females on birth control. You want to talk about like driving feminism and masculine women. Like they just signed us all up and put us all on birth control.
That's a big one too.
That's a whole thing, right? And you have pharma and they're messing with the food, and it's hard. You've got to do everything you can to like fight.
Have you seen those studies too? I don't know a lot about this, but apparently female birth control, hormonal birth control, makes women less attracted to masculine features. So they're more attracted to feminized men.
Yes.
From pair bonding, but not for hookups. Because female hormonal birth control actually did cause a promiscuity epidemic, I would say, because the repercussions of having sex are now completely different if you're a female. For all of known history before hormonal birth control, you were very careful if you were a woman and you slept with somebody, because you're going to be pregnant for 9 months and now you're going to have to raise this child.
Right.
So the decision-making process is much different for a man than it is a female. And so if they're pair bonding with men that are more beta, I guess you could say, but then sleeping with a bunch of alpha men, you have all sorts of crazy implications because of that.
It's just another, and then the men with the whatever was in the water that's causing men to be more gay.
Estrogen.
We need to chill out.
Yes.
All this hormonal scientific manipulation, we need to chill the fuck out. We're going to do something weird.
Filter your water.
If we haven't.
It's almost like we're going to start encouraging people to cut off their private parts.
I know, right?
Save the planet.
Let's cheer that on. Yeah.
They subsidize it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They subsidize it. Speaking of water, I just had to go through this. I was on a well for years and years and years in this pristine rainforest, and now I'm in Miami and I'm like ordering water. I'm getting Mountain Valley spring water. My wife's like, "Oh, Mountain Valley was purchased by some shitty corporation and there's arsenic in the water." I'm like, "Oh, we need an RO
You need
filter."
an RO. Yep.
Yeah, but it doesn't take out.
An RO.
It doesn't take out 100% of the pharmaceuticals.
No, and then you also have to remineralize, so it's not. Yeah,
and carbon filter. It's like we got one coming to the house right now. It's like a 7-stage thing, and there's so many things.
You escape it. How do you stay sane?
I don't know. I mean, don't ask me.
Just buy Bitcoin and
live your life.
Change you wish to see. What else can we do?
Raise some chickens.
Yeah,
some children and some chickens.
Some children and some chickens. Sounds like a good place to end.
Yeah.
Could you, if you have any parting words of wisdom, please feel free to share. Otherwise, if you could just let people know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, I am. Well, it was great to be here. It's great to talk with you guys.
Thank you.
I am exclusively on X. You can find me at Michelle Weekley. It's my real name, unfortunately, but I am there. I am on Nostr, although not that often. I hope to see it succeed, but I am primarily on X. There's just not enough time in the day right now to be on multiple platforms. So
I hear that.
Yep.
I hear that. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
There.
This was fun.
Thank you guys. It was lots of fun.
Yeah. We lock our doors, we encrypt our hard drives, and we use strong passwords. But most people leave one thing wide open: their phone line. SIM swap attacks are one of the fastest growing methods of digital theft. In minutes, a hacker can clone your accounts, reset your passwords, and drain your life. Unfortunately, this is not science fiction. It happens every single day. Efani is the only mobile service protection designed exclusively to protect you from SIM swap attacks. Efani offers military-grade encryption on their product and offers up to $5 million of SIM swap insurance. And to date, there have been exactly 0 SIM swaps on any of Efani's over 50,000 protected accounts. So you don't need to live in fear, you just need to protect your weakest link. Go to Efani.com/breedlove to secure your phone line today. Again, that's Efani, EFANI.com/breedlove. For the past 25 years, I've been reading roughly one book per week. Almost entirely difficult nonfiction books, the kind that really shift your thinking. Books on physics, money, power, psychology, spirituality, and philosophy. The real stuff. But I get it. Most people don't have time to read 50 books per year. So I hand-selected my favorite nonfiction books and distilled each one of them into a course that you can take in 50 to 100 times faster than it would take you to read the entire book. Each course gives you the key insights, mental models, and frameworks that matter. We launched with 15 book courses, and we are building toward a library of 100 by the end of year 1. So if you are a seeker of truth, wisdom, and personal growth, then my book course is for you. To sign up, go to course.breedlove.io. Again, that's course.breedlove.io. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.